Hey everyone, welcome back to Radical World, the podcast. I'm Tulio Suragusa, speaking with the Radical Pioneers. I have Matt Perez and Jose Leal with me today. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks, Julio. Good to
So,
be here.
so far, we've had an interesting conversation about the how Radical started in episode one in this season. If you guys haven't looked at that, I encourage you to look at episode one. Gives you a little history about how Radical started. And then we started to dig into living in a fiat world and what that means. And when do we realize we're in a fiat reality? What is the legacy? What is it like working in a fiat world? What's the educational system look like? Even fiat parenting and fiat companies. And so if you missed that, I encourage you to look at episode two. And then we went into more details in episode three to talk about how these lenses, the fiat lenses that we all wear for many, many years, and we've manifested a reality based on a non-reality view of things. So, and how that's impacted our work structure and our organization, our policies. And really, we started to uncover this idea that um, perhaps it's not necessarily the people that are the problem, but it is the system that continues to generate an environment where the people kind of have to comply. And in some cases, force is used, coercion, manipulation, all the things we all complain about. And then in episode four, we dug into how this system creates a lot of polarization and disengagement, both in communities, at work, and even across countries, and some of the problems that the fiat world has produced in terms of discontentment and a lot of the blaming game. You know, it's because of that person or that political party and so on. And we really uncovered that it's really not. It's about the system, that you could take a really great empathetic individual and put them into that system, and they'll come out on the other side messed up. And today we're really going to talk about, okay, how do we get out of this crazy fiat reality? What's the alternative lenses, what we call the radical lens, in which we can see things from um, more like the way nature works, and perhaps begin to make different choices that reflects more a natural way of being, because we definitely uncovered that the fiat world is not a natural way of being. It's actually quite artificial. So let's kick this off today. And we know that the fiat lenses have created tremendous dysfunction, as we've discussed in the previous podcasts. But how can we see the world differently? That's the big question.
Yeah, I like to think that there's two things that keep us in that world, in the fiat world. One is the structures, as you pointed out, the system itself. It's very easy to just fall right back into to seeing the system as it is, because it's all around us. Everywhere we turn, everything is built on a fiat mindset.
It's all we know.
It's all we know. On the other side, when people start talking about, well, let's change it to something else, even when we're talking about something new, our minds are expecting something fiat. And so we end up having this fiat lens. And so that's the recognition of what it is that we're trying to say here is there's the world that's been manifest by the fiat lens, and the fiat lens itself, which is our conditioning of that fiat world. And so the radical lens, which we like to talk about as being flipping up this fiat lens, is really recognizing, I like to think of it as that we don't have to have a world that is based on fear, command and control, and a system of competition. And that's the world that we can look at. If you, Matt, last week I interviewed with Rachel, and she talked about the chairs, the musical chairs. I don't know, Tulio, if you saw that, but you know, we've had a world where there's less chairs than there are people. And so we end up having this fight over who gets the last chair, right? And that's the fiat world that we've built. So the radical lens I like to think of is it's a world where we don't think of it as there aren't enough chairs, that only you can win. Pardon me, you can only win if somebody else loses. And so looking at ourselves, looking at each other through this lens of our nature rather than looking at it from this fiat. Hopefully that makes some sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, and I'd like to get Matt's opinion on this. It talks to this idea. So far, everything we've talked about, the fiat lens, it's all about what can I get out of it? It's a system based on what can I get out of it and how can I get the most out of it. There's no consideration for what I can give into it. So there's always going to be winners and losers in that system, and survivors and thrivers in that environment. Whereas the radical lens is more about like nature. Nature doesn't have a mindset of scarcity or limitation. It's in a constant state of giving into itself. It doesn't say the sun didn't shine enough today, so I'm not going to produce enough of this. It just keeps giving, and the system continuously operates in a constantly state of giving, and there's balance and harmony. So are you suggesting we ought to be thinking more the way nature operates? Oddly enough, we're part of nature, but we don't think the way nature does because of this fiat lens. And how do people step into that? Because like we said, we default to this model we've seen for a long time. Like, how do you disrupt the circuitry, if you will, to step out of that and say, hey, there's another way we ought to be thinking about doing this? What are your thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, I don't think that nature has a whole lot to do with it, because we messed up everything. It's more of what Jose was saying. There's centralization, okay, and that's what causes most of the problems. And centralization is based on transparency, not disclosing everything, etc. If you think of that as nature, okay, then it's nature. But I don't tend to think in terms of nature or anything like that. It's more of, look, we created this world. Why and all that stuff, I don't care. It doesn't matter. We created this world. We can create other worlds. And we created a world, like Jose said, a competition. People, not enough chairs. I got to kill the guy next to me to get into a chair. And the number of chairs is defined by the most powerful. So whoever the most powerful person is tells us how many chairs there are. And then you compete for them. And that's what causing most of the problems that we have. So wars are basically not enough chairs in terms of land and stuff like that. The stuff that Putin is doing in Ukraine is he wants to be the most powerful. He wants to eliminate Ukraine is part of the system of the West, and he wants to be the most powerful. So he has to do away with Ukraine, make it part of Russia, or part of. Oh,
yes, part of Russia.
Yeah, there's no
the old Soviet
anymore. Sorry, part of Russia, and stuff like that. So that's, to me, it boils down to centralization and transparency. Okay, if we concentrate on the power of me, I say, oh, there's only 2 chairs. One of you 2 guys, not me. One of you 2 guys have to get up and leave. Why? Because I want you guys to compete, so you don't have time to look at the injustices that I based upon you guys. So that's the basis of it all. So nature, by you said one thing that did strike a chord with me, which is the nature is always giving and doesn't care what you need. I'm always giving. And, we eat some plants. We don't eat some other plants. We eat some animals. We don't eat some other animals and stuff like that. But it's always giving. That's true. And humans could be in the business of always giving to other humans, to a community. But that's not the way that we set up. And the same way that we set up the old system of I exploit you by deciding to sell in one chair instead of two, is a world that we can change. I mean, the good news is that we made it. We can come up with another system. And I make the distinction of not replacing the current system. The current system is going to go on for a long time. It's going to fight itself to not be replaced. But so we show more of an alternative. And so far we're happy with that term. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So
but
we see the manifestation. We see the manifestation of the Fiat lenses. It's clear, right?
Yeah.
But it is a lens or perception that we sort of bought into. So likewise, there is a radical lens. How do we buy into the radical lens? Or maybe it's not about buying into it. What's the source of it that says, I don't have to live in this scarcity model, because the Fiat model is a scarcity model, right? It's a mindset of scarcity.
Yes.
Whereas nature is not about scarcity. So what's the thinking? What's the source and origin of the radical lens that makes us step into a model where it's not about scarcity? How do we recognize the source of it so we can make proper decisions based on views of abundance, not scarcity?
Well, I don't know what the source of it is. It's something that Jose and I talking and stuff like that, we came up with this thing, and my son, Adrian Perez. But the simplest way we can put it is that it's got to be based on a foundation. Okay? And the foundation is meaning and belonging. You have to be willing to belong to. We all do, whether we say it or not. We have to be part of something. We don't stand on our own. Decentralization and transparency I already talked about, and then experimentation for the things that we actually do. So I don't know what this is going to end up. It may end up in very different ways and all that stuff, but treat everything like an experiment. Sometimes Tulio, okay, we keep things tight and all that stuff. Anyways, and treat everything like an experiment. It's not. It pisses me off when in software we say, "Oh, you estimated this 3 weeks," and it happens to be 4. It went the way of 4 weeks, and the thing is, everything is an experiment in life. Going back to nature, we don't do the same thing twice. We don't. We do things that look the same at the macro level, but are not the same. Sometimes we do it with males, sometimes we do it with females, sometimes we do it with white people and black people and Chinese people and all that stuff. So Asian people, I guess, and we have to treat everything as an experiment. You see what comes out of it. So I don't know if there's a source per se that we discovered the gold in Brazil or whatever. It's more of thinking of all the things that have gone wrong with the FIAT system, the wars and we started by not trying to manipulate. we started by thinking of not um, coming up with fixes to the system. And the thing is, that can go on forever. So let's try a new system. Wow, new system. And it was little by little. It wasn't one setting. Is we struggle, we argue, we scream, and all that stuff. And eventually we said, this is a new system altogether. It's still a system, but it's new. It's different.
So it sounds like there's no hope for us then.
No,
We're just having empty conversations then. So how do we step into the radical lenses if there's no, is there really no hope? I mean, to step out of this?
there is hope. I think there's hope. And
the foundation is hope. Is if you follow the things in the foundation, you will be at least closer to what we're thinking about. It's something that we pull out of our rear ends, as Jose likes to say. But that's the way we do everything. Humans, don't look at this and go, oh, the black stick that's going to make us rich. We sell black sticks and it makes us rich. So there's no source per se, other than the wanting to create a better system. So I think that radical is a better system. We think that radical is a better system, but it's not the last one. There might be another one after that, and it'll take another 400 years to figure it out. So,
what do you think, Jose? Can people do people have the radical lenses within themselves that they can activate? What are your thoughts?
I think that the radical lens is the way we are born, and that when we're born, like if you all of us have seen children. When you see a 2-year-old child and they want to help mommy and daddy, nothing in them says, nope, I won't do it because, that means work and I don't want to work unless I get paid. Right? Right? Or you don't
your own diaper.
Give me a raise, right? We're born being generous. We're born wanting to participate and contribute and all of that. But then we're taught, don't do that unless. Don't do that unless the teacher tells you that you can speak. Don't do that unless the boss tells you can do it. Don't do that unless you're going to get paid. That would be dumb to work without pay. All of those things condition us away from seeing the world this way. Yeah. But it's really hard to lift these lenses because we're so conditioned that the world looks normal to us now. Right? It's just the way it is. With this lenses down, it looks normal, right? Yeah. But when we lift it up, then it looks really distorted. It looks really screwed up. And that's the fiat world that we've been talking about, is that if you look at it from our natural lenses, our radical lenses, then you realize it's screwed up. Like, this is not right. Why are we doing what we do to people? And it becomes obvious to a lot of people that are working in this transformation world that the way we do law is broken. The way we do business is broken. The way we do relationships is broken. The way we do governance is broken. And it becomes evident when you look at it through the radical lens. So I do think the radical lens is a natural lens that we're born with. I also think that that getting to the radical lens is allowing ourselves to sense into the feelings we've had all along, but have learned to ignore. Mm. That when those people told us those things, and it raised our hair, for those of us who still have it, then it would, you would go like, why is the teacher telling me that I can't do the thing that I feel like I need to do?
Number one, number two.
Well, what I'm hearing though is, and I think perhaps this is the key takeaway, is that we do have a choice, but we've been, unbeknownst to us, because most of this happened when we were younger, we have continuously chosen to go down this path in the desire for survival and the desire to fit in. But at the end of the day, it's a choice. The programming happened when we were young, but now as adults, we're continuing to choose to wear the Fiat lenses. So how do you make a different choice? How do people make that choice?
I like to think that the way you make that choice is by not allowing the stuff that is Fiat to be normal, to see it as the dysfunction that it is, and to lean into the things that Matt was talking about. I like to think about Fiat as force. So when I see force, when somebody's exerting force by trying to centralize things to he or she, right? They're taking away our space to move, and they're pulling it towards them so that they have the control. That's a place where we feel that doesn't feel right. But then we go, that's the way it is. He's the boss. Of course, that's the way it is.
Right.
That's the way it is. He's the teacher. That's the way it is. Oh, he's the governor. He's the mayor. He's the whatever it is. And it's about sensing into the fact that none of us like other people telling us what to do, but we've become used to it and we think that it's normal. And so we justify it. They have the power, therefore it's okay.
But there is a vehicle that makes all that power possible, right? And that vehicle is what allows me to eat because I'm hungry and I'm cold and I need a place to live in, right? That's the controlling mechanism that empowers all this to be possible, right? So that's, how do you break that power? Yeah, the money. I need the money to eat, right? That's the controlling thing. Who's got the most money has the most control. Or is that the real case? That how do you fix that? What's the thinking there?
You don't fix it.
You don't, right?
You don't. And now we go to the area of ownership. People have a really hard time not thinking of other models of ownership. The idea that this belongs to all of us is like, oh, you're a communist, you're a dreamer, you're idealistic, I've been called that. And you call it a lot of names, but it's everything outside of the system, the FIAT system, is it's nice to think about, but I got to eat. So what do? So we got to come up with ways of not letting that be the primary motivator, if you will, or getting over that. And the books have plenty of examples of how you can do that. Capital is still needed, unfortunately, but as a loan, not as a power thing. It's like I give you X dollars and I get 10% of your company forever. Forever, I get 10% of your company. Of course, the money that I give you dries out, right? But not the power that I sold. The power that I sold is 10% of my company. And of course, you don't sell 10% of your company. You sell 10 to this guy and 20 to that guy and 30 to that guy and whatever. I got over 100%. But all that stuff is forever. So they end up owning you as part of the business, or they fire you, either way. So your livelihood is in the hands of other people. And I'll give you an example. So we're promoting in Mexico. We're promoting the Perez application, which allows us to recognize other people's contribution and stuff like that. And everybody, to a person has a hard time thinking of what results of that as anything but coins. Oh, so they generate coins that you then change. No, it's not coins. And they can't get past that. Because we're so used to coins and buying things to eat and stuff like that. So yeah, that's one of the problems that's in the book.
And I think,
Your thoughts, Jose?
yeah, I think the way that we can do it, and I think have to do it, is not trying to make people who have lived all their lives in fiat to become completely clear of the fiat lens. But we have young people who are closer to the radical lens and are able to actually make a life from that place, not allow themselves to get buried into the fiat lens in the first place.
Yeah.
Right. And so being able to start new types of companies that are radical through a radical lens, that are co-owned, co-managed, decentralized, the whole kit and caboodle, it makes for a viable transition. There are some people who are embedded deeply in the fiat lens, in the fiat lens in the fiat world, that will be able to transition out of it. But for the most part, that's not who we're talking about. We're talking about younger people who are not yet embedded and know deeply that they don't want to go there. They're already rebelling. They're already pulling back. This whole they're disengaged at work is the radical lens at work. It's the radical lens working. They're going, no, I don't want this. No, I don't want you to tell me what to do. No, I don't want to work in a place that has no meaning.
The whole fiat lens and reality exists only for one reason, because we willingly gave up agency.
Yes.
And the newer generation isn't buying into it. They don't want to give up agency.
Yes.
And it's easy to call them rebellious or whatever you want to call them, but realistically, they just want to maintain their own agency. And I think hopefully with some collective intelligence, there could be some change, but it does require a massive amount of people with that similar consciousness to make that change.
Yeah.
And so, we need to dig into more. What would that look like? How is that possible? And explore. Maybe it's not about finding the answers as it is asking more questions to awaken the mind to the possibility that we have given up our agency a long time ago and continue to do so collectively. So what if collectively we took it back? That's the big question, right?
I think, as you pointed out, the agency driving us is coming out. This is no longer the 50s where you wore the same tie and the same shirt, and different shirts, but they're all white, and different ties, but they're all blue. And all that stuff has been little by little being thrown by the wayside, but it's disorganized right now. It's kind of a free for all. And some people a lot of people are concentrating on climate change because it's going to kill us. It won't kill us. We don't let anything kill us outright. But it's a sign of this wanting to be different. We won't let the gas companies or the petroleum companies tell us what to do and guide our lives. We want to take control of that. misogyny is the whole thing with, and the whole thing with trans and gays and stuff like that. That's all come out. That's all coming out, and schools are struggling with it, and that, and eventually, the government will try to take control of that and do it their way, and that's what we don't want. The government does not help us. Governments have not helped us. They help the rich and powerful as they should, and the banking system is not helping us or anything. So we need to we need to organize. We need to give it a way of organizing, and that's what we're missing. And that's what the radical thing is all about, is how to organize, what is the foundation. You build anything you want on top of the foundations, but it's got to be centralized, it's got to be meaningful, it's got to be experimentation and stuff like that, and just provide direction. You can't, if you get into the business of, like, you see all the what you call it, the self-management directions. Some of them have 17-page constitutions, some have, but they all have rules. And my thing is, we're very bad at running rules, number one. But second of all, we don't want your rules. I want my rules. I want to do this according to my rules, and have the liberty of saying this rule doesn't work anymore. We're going to go to that rule. That's what we're hoping will happen, is that people will take control of the rules, if there are any, and come up with systems that would be more gentle in themselves. They will allow people to be people, and communities to be communities. For example, you said an example at the beginning, I don't remember exactly, but it had to do with individualism. I want the most for me. I'm the king. And the thing is, what happens during the catastrophe of some sort? Building comes down, or there's too much snow, that people just go out on the street and start helping the fellow man. They just do that. Nobody told them to do it. Nobody told them how to do it or anything like that. They just do it. Well, we want a system that works more like that.
Yeah.
And that's not being a dreamer. We got a lot of descriptions on the books and stuff like that. That's not being a dreamer, or whatever you want to call it. It's just that we have to organize a different way of doing it. And it took, so the thing that we did in this country a long time ago, you forget about slavery for a second, is that we actually implemented an instance of something that had been talked about for a long time. And enlightenment was basically what we tried to create our own way. And most of the people in Congress at the time were slavers. But they said, we all created equal. Not them, but us. We're all created equal. And that was very powerful. That was very powerful. Is they created the first census, and then the French tried to do the same thing, and they fucked up, and they got Napoleon to the act, and eventually they got it right. But that's what we're going to do. We want to create the first instance of this model, the radical model, and then people will come up with the European way and the African way and the Asian way to do it. So We don't know what will come out of it, but something has to give. Either we get more rigid about how things work. No, you have to put your right foot in front of the other foot and stuff like that, or we have to give ourselves, take back the agency that we've given
Yeah.
up.
Well, Ecclesiastic 8:9 said, "Man has dominated man to his injury." So it is
Yes.
very true, those words. And we don't want to leave people with absolutely no hope that nothing can change, but there has to be a new way of doing things. You know, a
Yes.
radical world has to be introduced in order for things to change. And I think that's a worthwhile conversation in season 2 of the podcast of the Radical Pioneers. This brings an end to season 1. So definitely come back in season 2 as we dive into the radical world. What does that look like? What's the hope that could bring? How can we look at and do things differently and step out of this fiat lens? Because clearly its existence is to the ruin of man. And by man, I'm not just talking about males. I'm talking about the species. So want you to come back for that. In the interim, next week, we got a new guest on the show. It's Rodney Evans, who's a steward of the Ready, a Future of Work consultancy. So come check out that show on the Radical World podcast. And until we see you again next time, looking forward to continuing this conversation with the Radical Pioneers. Stay well, everyone.